Reminder once again that as we inch ever closer to this 2016 election, it is going to be an interesting time indeed. Every day brings something new, both sides trying to find something, anything, the slightest issue to undermine the opposition and leave a population filled and racked with doubt, or so they hope. Even when a member of the media makes a gaffe, it strikes that immediate pounce to capitalize. That is one of the points we're going to begin the arena with today. First up, co-founder of Life After Hate, a group created by former influential members of the radicalized far-right movement, educating people about extremism and racism. Welcome, Christian Picciolini, paired with the adjunct journalism professor at Marymount Manhattan College and Seton Hall University, Dorian Davis. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's good to be back, Ed.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
Christian, I'm going to start with you. Let's go ahead and start with what happened in Boston today. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is sentenced to death, which really caught a lot of people by surprise, knowing that it was in Massachusetts and there was a very likelihood there that they would send him to jail for the rest of his life. What's your take?
You know, this is a bit of a dilemma for people who are typically against death. And this guy was certainly constantly.
Okay, tell you what, I'm going to ask you to hold on just 1 second here, Christian. We're having a little bit of a problem with your audio. It's going in and out. Let's check on that. Dorian, let me get to you then, because as people were indicating in Massachusetts, I was shocked. People I know there said they thought it was undoubtedly going to be life.
I was not extremely shocked by this ruling, Ed. Massachusetts is anti-death penalty. In fact, a Boston Globe poll recently found about 60% of Bostonians were in favor of life for this guy, actually. But remember, the jury was death penalty approved. So anyone who opposed the death penalty on moral grounds was excluded from the jury.
Christian, let me see if you're back with us here right now.
Yeah, you know, on one hand, for people who are against the death penalty like I am, this is a moral dilemma. This guy was certainly a monster who had every intention of killing innocent Americans and children. And on the other hand, you know, for somebody like him, what can we learn from somebody like Tsarnaev, who could spend the rest of his life in prison? What can we learn about extremism? What can we learn about why young people join these types of organizations?
See, I'm going to stop you there for a second, Christian, because here comes the argument from the other side. They will say, wait a minute, why do we need to learn anything from this guy? This guy is an animal. He killed children. He specifically wanted to execute people on a public street. As a matter of fact, you as well as I know, Dorian knows it too, there are people who are saying right now today, take him in the back of the courthouse, put a bullet in his head, let's end this.
Yeah, and I can understand that point of view as well. What I think we can learn from people like him are, you know, exactly why do young people go to Syria to join ISIS? Why are people joining right-wing extremist groups here, far-right-wing extremist groups here in America? What is the frame of mind? Who's responsible for recruiting these young people to commit these acts of terrorism and violence? And I think that that's an important thing to learn.
Do you perhaps have some sympathy for him, knowing your background, that you were involved in violence at a young age and then you found the way to become a little more civilized?
No, I wouldn't call it sympathy. I certainly don't have sympathy for a murderer and a terrorist. But I do know that it's quite easy for young people in this country to learn extremist ideologies. All you need is a charismatic person who can promise you a better life and eventually try and show you that and convince you to commit these types of acts of terrorism. It's really simple.
Dorian, do you care at all if we learned anything from this guy?
No, Ed, I don't think this is Silence of the Lambs where we have him fill out a form and we learn something about serial murderers. I think his best case scenario was to rot in prison for 30 or 40 years, and he might do that anyway, even with the death penalty.
He probably will, because let's face it, the appeal process is going to take 5, 8, 10, 15 years. He might be around for another 20 years. I got about a minute 30 left. Let's get something in here real quick. Dorian, to you first. George Stephanopoulos apologizes for not telling people he gave $75,000 to the Clinton Foundation. I'm sorry. I have a lot of respect for George Stephanopoulos. This doesn't wash.
It doesn't wash. You know, he interviewed the author of Clinton Cash, which is a book about corruption at the Clinton Foundation, and never once mentioned during the interview, hey, I'm a donor to the Clinton Foundation. It's egregious.
It is not only egregious, though, but doesn't it give the right, Dorian, that ammunition they need to say that it's a left-wing media? We know it. Here's the proof.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, George Stephanopoulos has already been in hot water with Republicans. He had a back and forth with Mitt Romney about contraception during the 2012 debates that a lot of people felt was unfair to Mitt Romney, and this adds fuel to that fire.
Christian, what do you think here? Stephanopoulos, he should have at least told people what he was doing, right? But should he be fired, I guess now? Some people are saying that he's no longer a journalist at this point. He's a partisan hack.
Listen, it's no secret that Stephanopoulos was firmly in the Clinton camp. But this was a donation to the Clinton Foundation, not the Clinton campaign. And the Clinton Foundation does some amazing things in the work for AIDS and HIV. It was a mistake. He should have absolutely announced that he made the contribution, but I don't think he should be fired for it.
Well, fair to say, though, that if he would have said something early on, they would have said, oh, it's the foundation. He might have it might have been quieted a little bit. But now that it has to come out and somebody has to find out about it, that's why you don't trust him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he owned up to the fact that he knows he should have made it public when he made the donation. But, I still think, journalism has to learn to not be biased to one side or the other and just report the news.
That's difficult in itself. Stick around, gentlemen. We're going to come back. We got more to cover as the arena continues right here on the Friday edition of MidPoint. Stay with us. Back to work. Joining us on the panel today, former white supremacist, author of Romantic Violence, Memoirs of an American Skinhead, Christian Picciolini, paired with adjunct journalism professor at Marymount Manhattan College and Seton Hall University, Dorian Davis. Dorian, I'm going to start with you on this one. A men's rights activist blog is calling for a boycott of Mad Max Fury Road. They're calling it a feminist piece of propaganda posing as a guy flick because Charlize Theron actually is pretty tough. Look, I'm going to say it for you. Come on, guys. Man up, will you?
Yeah, I agree, Ed. I was convinced, because this is so preposterous, I was convinced it was a parody, and then I went on YouTube and watched a video of the author defending this piece, and he did not appear to be kidding. So, yeah, it's preposterous. Of course, having a strong female lead does not mean that a movie is any less appealing to men. Think about Aliens. Think about Lara Croft.
Well, you think about it too, Christian, because you and I both know, we all know, there are guys out there who are going to be offended because they want to go see the movie, they want to see Mad Max like Mel Gibson was, or they want to see the tough guy, but just because there's a tough woman in there, they get upset about it, right? We've seen this all before. There's that generation.
Yeah, I'm with Dorian on that. I thought I was reading a story straight out of The Onion when I read this morning. The fact that a strong woman has got a lead role in an action film, I think, is an amazing thing. Who's to say that a woman can't be an action hero? And, honestly, I think these guys need to crawl back into their hole and go somewhere else.
Look, and we have to say this out loud. All right, it's still Charlize Theron, guys. Will you stop? She could be bald and she looks good. All right, there you go. I had my guy moment there. I got it out of the way right away. All right, here we go. Let's stick with you, Christian. This is interesting, though. This is a teacher at the Forest Street Elementary School in Orange, New Jersey. She was fired. She assigned her class to write get-well letters to former Black Panther Mumia Abu Jamal, serving a life sentence for murdering a cop in 1981. She wrote them get-well letters. I think it's absolutely correct. I'm glad that they fired her.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think there's really no place for a third grader to be writing a letter to, a prisoner who's been convicted of murder. And that was a complete lapse of judgment. I don't know what kind of track record this woman has for teaching or what kind of training she has, but that's completely uncalled for.
Dorian, think about it, and that's just it. The kind of people that are teaching our children, you have to be concerned about it, because I'm sure there are people out there who say, oh, well, wait a minute, the guy's suffering complications, some diabetes, some sympathy. But this is not what a teacher's supposed to do.
Well, the most surprising thing about this story is that a teacher got fired, because that's almost impossible to do in New York where I live. But I think not only is it a lapse of judgment, I think it's an abuse of the teacher's authority to conscribe third graders to write get-well letters to a man who may or may not be actually guilty of what he's been convicted of. But the fact that he is a convicted felon alone should tell the teacher that parents are going to have a problem.
Well, look at it this way. We've had teachers also who have written the president letters, and they've had their class write letters to the president basically stating political issues in those letters. That is not what a teacher's supposed to do. So the simple thing then is, Christian, I guess, when you get to this, should you fire these people immediately? I mean, even what Dorian said, it's tough to fire them, but just bang, that's it, you're out.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this teacher's instance, I think absolutely it's grounds for firing. I mean, there are a lot of other opportunities where we can teach young people to pay it forward or to make good happen in different ways. And I think that writing to, a convicted murderer is not the right way. Now, whether, I know that there's a lot of discussion on whether he committed the crime or not, but the fact is he is in prison for murder at the moment, and it's not the best person to be a role model for.
Pretty much. I'm with you right on that one. About 90 seconds left here. Dorian, to you, fewer students say they're being bullied at school, but those who are being bullied are more likely to be girls than boys, and bullying has actually spread. Wait a minute, I thought we had all these anti-bullying efforts that were out there, yet we're finding out that it's probably even worse than it was before, and now girls are being bullied and are the bullies many times.
It's hard to know what to make of this survey. And, you know, I think that I'm skeptical of it because the definition of bullying is so subjective. Is it a microaggression or is it like a cat fight backstage at the View? You know, what constitutes bullying? And that's what we're depending on for this survey. I think there is some good news, though. That same survey showed that bullying was down a few points from 2005 when they started conducting it, and that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. I'll tell you what, though, Christian, Dorian makes a great point here, because sometimes you hear about bullying that is just the most minor of infractions here. I mean, there were two kids, I guess, recently. One of them, they pantsed each other every now and then at school. One kid did it, and they got sent to a special school. These kids have been growing up their whole lives. They called it almost bullying. It's ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make something of this survey, but I think we still have a long way to go to teach young people about equality and a way to treat each other. I mean, as long as these things keep happening, and as long as there's any bullying happening, we're just not doing our job appropriately.
But shouldn't we make sure that it really is bullying and it's not just something minor and just kids being kids?
Well, I think as long as kids are still committing suicide and turning to drugs and you know, losing out on opportunities in their lives, I think it's something we need to continue to look at until.
Okay, I think that's fair, and we need to take that into the next conversation. Christian Picciolini, Dorian Davis, gentlemen, pleasure to see you both. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Ed.
All right, take care. After the break, he defied the blues for generations, celebrating B.B. King. Next on MidPoint.